Imagine opening the next chapter of the Mandalorian story and Djarin isn't hunting Imperials. He's taking orders from Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Our alliance has proven to be quite beneficial.
I know on paper that sounds completely backwards, the guy who helped take down Moff Gideon now fighting on the same side as the heir to the Empire. But when you look at what's really moving in the background of this era, that what if starts to feel a lot less crazy. Today we're going to dive into exactly how that could happen. We're going to break down exactly where Din is right now as the New Republic's go-to problem solver, what Thrawn is actually trying to build with the Imperial Remnant.
It is for the Empire, the security of our galaxy,
and how the bigger threats on the board could force these two onto the same side. By the end of this video, you'll see a version of the story where a Thrawn-Din alliance isn't just fanfiction, it's the logical next step for both these characters. So let's talk about why Thrawn might actually need Din, why Din might have no choice but to hear him out, and what that would mean for the war that's coming.
Perhaps it is time for us to live in the light once again.
Before we jump in, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop some high points too if you can, it's massively appreciated and really helps the channel out. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get into it.
You don't have the resources to protect the Outer Rim, let alone hunt down Imperial remnants. And I need work.
Alright, so Din Djarin might have started out as just another bounty hunter in the Outer Rim, but by this point in the timeline he's become one of the biggest wildcards in the entire galaxy. This is the guy who took down Moff Gideon, helped reclaim Mandalore, and somehow walks that line between lone gunslinger and reluctant hero. He's not out there trying to be a symbol, but every time he shows up, that balance of power shifts just a little bit. And now after everything that's happened, he's quietly working with the New Republic on a job-by-job basis. Carson Teva and the Adelphi Rangers know that when things get messy on the frontier, there's one Mandalorian they can call who will get the job done.
Let me buy you a drink, Mando.
Thanks, but I'm here on business.
Din takes those missions when they line up with two things, keeping Grogu safe and pushing what remains of the Empire further into the shadows. He's not suddenly a true believer in the Republic, but if an Imperial warlord starts causing trouble, he's more than happy to be the one they send in to shut it down. And that's important because it means the New Republic's quiet, unofficial fix-it guy is the same man who's already proven he can take out high-value Imperials when it really counts. Now on the other side of the board you've got Grand Admiral Thrawn, a chiss tactician who doesn't just fight battles, he engineers entire wars.
There'll be no negotiating with the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker.
Back in the days of the Empire, he was the commander the rebels were actually afraid of because he didn't rely on brute force. He studied cultures, histories, even art to understand how his enemies think, and then dismantled them with terrifying precision. Now, in the aftermath of Palpatine and Vader, Thrawn is being positioned as the heir to the Empire, the mind behind the Imperial Remnant, the one person capable of taking these scattered warlords and fractured fleets and turning them into a real alternative to New Republic rule.
Thrawn's return will herald in the re-emergence of our military.
He's not just trying to survive, he's trying to rebuild a system that can stand toe-to-toe with everything the rebellion fought for. So yeah, you've got Din, a Mandalorian operating as this unofficial New Republic problem solver on the frontier, and you've got Thrawn, the architect of a resurgent empire that needs those same frontier worlds to fall back under its control. Thrawn represents exactly the kind of power structure that Din's been tearing down piece by piece. And from Thrawn's point of view, a Mandalorian with a Force-sensitive child, New Republic ties, and a record of killing people like Gideon isn't just another nuisance, he's a variable that can't be left unchecked.
Stand up!
And that's where this gets interesting. What happens when the galaxy's biggest wildcard ends up on the radar of the one man who specializes in neutralizing unpredictable threats? The irony right now is that Din still doesn't know who Thrawn is. He's heard about Imperial warlords, he's dealt with Gideon, he understands that there are pockets of the old Empire hanging on. But the name Thrawn hasn't landed on his doorstep yet. That's going to change as Thrawn steps out of the shadows and starts testing the New Republic's limits. Someone, Ahsoka, Carson Teva, maybe even Hera is going to bring that name to Din. And when that happens, these two aren't just on a vague collision course anymore. They're locked in as future enemies by design, which is exactly why the idea of them ever ending up on the same side sounds so insane, and why it might actually say more about the war that's coming than either of them realise. But yeah, this whole idea of enemies doing a complete U-turn and working together isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. When you first hear Din Djarin and Grand Admiral Thrawn on the same side, your brain instantly rejects it. These two feel like they're built to be enemies. One is the quiet Mandalorian dad with a laser focus on protecting his kid. The other is a blue-skinned chess master trying to build a new version of the Empire. On paper, they should only ever meet at the end of a blaster or the barrel of a Star Destroyer. But Star Wars has always played with the idea that where you start isn't always where you end up. Han Solo didn't begin as a scruffy-looking nerf herder we met in the cantina. In Solo, he's literally part of the Imperial war machine.
Good luck, Han Solo. We'll have you flying in no time.
He's a mud trooper on Mimban, fighting in their wars, wearing their armour, taking their orders. He's not a rebel hero. He's just trying to survive inside the very system he'll eventually help burn down. Even Luke almost goes that way, back on Tatooine before Obi-Wan ever hands him the lightsaber. He's talking about wanting to leave the farm and go to the academy. And yeah, that's the Imperial Academy. In another version of the story, Luke Skywalker could have easily started his journey flying ties for the regime he ends up destroying. Then you've got Finn in the sequels, who might be the most on-the-nose version of this. He's literally raised as a stormtrooper, stripped of a name, conditioned to serve the First Order. FN 2187 is just a number in white armour until he breaks. He snaps out of it, defects, and becomes one of the faces of the Resistance. He goes from enforcing the system to picking up a lightsaber and standing against the people who literally made him. And of course, there's Anakin Skywalker, the ultimate flip. He starts as a Jedi, the chosen one, the hero of the Clone Wars, and falls so hard he becomes Darth Vader, the most feared enforcer the galaxy's ever seen. So, same person, completely different sides of the fight, depending on when you catch him. So this idea of characters crossing lines, starting in one place and ending up somewhere completely different, it's not a weird one-off thing, it's baked into the DNA of Star Wars. Some characters fall and never come back, some claw their way out and redeem themselves. Which is why, when we talk about a what if, where Din ends up on the same side as Thrawn, yeah, it sounds wild at first. But when you look at the history of this saga, then maybe it's not that crazy at all. And so yeah, here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just a vibes-based, wouldn't it be cool pitch. There's actually stuff in canon already that hints at this kind of team-up being possible. We've seen alliances of convenience, we've seen enemies work together against something worse. So the real question isn't, would it ever happen? It's what kind of threat would be big enough that even someone like Din has to stand next to an Imperial Grand Admiral? Yeah, right now, the Imperial Remnant feels like the big bad. Gideon, Warlord, Star Destroyers hiding out on the edge of nowhere. But the scary thing is, they're not the only threat to the galaxy. And they're certainly not the biggest.
This report reads like a child's fairy tale. Honestly, are we to believe any of it?
Because while Thrawn is out there building what's left of the Empire, something else is moving in the shadows that makes all of this look small by comparison. You see, over on Precedent, Baylan Skoll isn't just trying to get back to the main galaxy. He's not chasing glory in the New Republic Imperial tug-of-war. He's looking for a power, something greater than the Jedi, greater than the Empire.
So I may finally bring this cycle to an end.
In the Ahsoka season finale, we literally see him standing on the statues of the Mortis gods, the father, the son, and the broken remains of the daughter, staring out toward whatever's calling to him from that world. That's not just a cool backdrop, that's the show pointing a giant glowing arrow at the deepest, weirdest corner of Star Wars lore. And if you know your deeper stuff, that lines up almost a little too well with someone from Legends. In the old expanded universe, there was another being tied to the Mortis family. The one they left out of the Clone Wars arc, the mother. In the Fate of the Jedi novels, she's revealed as Abeloth, a mortal who once lived with the Ones, tried to make herself immortal by drinking from the font of power and bathing in the pool of knowledge, and ended up twisted into this chaotic dark side entity so dangerous she had to be locked away. She's a Force god gone wrong, a being that corrupts, possesses, and warps reality around her. So when you see Baylan on Precedent framed by the Mortis statues, talking about a power that can break the cycle, it's very easy to imagine he's brushing up against something Abeloth level, or at least that kind of Force horror. And you're telling me they brought the Mortis gods back, set them up in a new galaxy, and gave a fallen Jedi an entire side quest to chase some ancient power, and that was all just for vibes? You really think that's not going anywhere? But yeah, that's only one side of the board, because this whole era we're in, post-Return of the Jedi, New Republic struggling, Imperial warlords gathering, blue-skinned mastermind pulling the strings, that didn't start with Disney canon. This was originally a Legends concept. Back in the 90s, the sequel to the original trilogy was the Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire. And the main antagonist there was the same person we have right now, Grand Admiral Thrawn.
We'll always be one step ahead of her.
Thrawn was born in Legends and then pulled into canon, and in both versions, he isn't just a Saturday morning villain. In Legends, one of the biggest reasons he wanted a unified empire was because he knew about something worse coming from outside the known galaxy, the Yuuzhan Vong. Extragalactic invaders who fought with living biotechnology, couldn't be sent through the Force, and almost wiped out the New Republic.
We have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Now fast forward to the modern canon, and the same greater threat from the unknown regions idea gets worked into the Grisk, a fanatical species who infiltrate, enslave and manipulate entire civilizations from the shadows. In the new Thrawn novel, Thrawn literally goes to the Empire to secure an ally against them, and he uses Imperial resources because he believes only a unified, militarized galaxy stands a chance if the Grisk ever launch a full invasion. So you've got Baylan potentially poking a Mortis-tier force threat on one side, and Thrawn quietly panicking about a shadow empire of mind-controlling invaders on the other.
Deploy teams 1 and 2 use counter-encircling in tandem.
So yeah, when you zoom out, the whole New Republic versus Imperial Remnant conflict starts to look tiny. It also means we're not just dealing with one villain or one factional war. There are potentially 2 universe-changing threats out there that could wipe the board clean if they ever truly stepped into play. And if either of those really hits the galaxy, that's a much bigger problem for everyone. And so that's exactly where a what if, like Thrawn and Din being forced into an alliance, suddenly doesn't feel so crazy anymore. If Thrawn is the one guy who actually understands how big these threats are, and Din is the one guy who can't walk away if they ever get too close to Grogu, the question stops being would they ever work together and goes to what on earth would have to be coming over the horizon for them to even think about it. Now let's talk about what this actually looks like if they did it in canon, because this isn't just a fun what if. You can slot this straight into where Din is right now. You can keep him exactly as he is at the end of Season 3, taking New Republic jobs one at a time, cleaning up whatever Imperial mess is bubbling on the edge of nowhere. Only this time, instead of another Gideon-style warlord or pirate raid, he drops out of hyperspace over some backwater world and immediately feels that something is wrong. The town's still standing, the ships are still on the landing pads, the farms and the infrastructure untouched. But the people are gone, no sign of battle, no bodies, just empty seats and weird, unfamiliar tech scattered around that doesn't belong to the Empire, the New Republic, or anyone we've met on screen. From Din's point of view, it's just unknown tech and a mystery the New Republic hasn't bothered to look into properly. From our point of view, you can already feel the story tilting into something much bigger than another remnant cleanup job.
I don't like this.
And this is where Thrawn steps into the picture and everything flips, because he has a history with the unknown regions. He's seen species that don't conquer the way the Empire did. They don't show up with Star Destroyers and big banners. They hollow you out from the inside. They turn leaders into puppets and quietly convert entire populations into tools. So you have this great contrast. Din thinks he stumbled onto a creepy one-off, and Thrawn turns up fully expecting to deal with a Mandalorian nuisance, only to clock the pattern instantly. Population missing, not slaughtered, structures left intact and ready to be reused. Devices that clearly aren't New Republic or Imperial design. In that moment, it stops being New Republic versus Imperial Remnant and becomes Thrawn realizing the thing he's been preparing for in the background is now moving faster toward the known space than he calculated. And here's the uncomfortable bit. If he's right, does Din actually have the luxury of treating him just like another target anymore? That's where the reluctant alliance stops feeling like fan fiction and starts feeling like the only move left on the board. Din still sees Thrawn as the enemy, and Thrawn still sees Din as a dangerous variable he would rather remove from the equation. But when they're both standing in the middle of a ghost settlement that's clearly been prepped for something bigger, they're forced to recognize the same brutal truth. If this is the Grisk, then neither the Empire or the New Republic wins this on their own. It's not about trust or shared values or Thrawn suddenly turning into a good guy. It's pure survival math. Thrawn needs someone who knows the frontier, who has a personal line to people like Carson Tavor and Ahsoka, and who can move in ways an Imperial hierarchy never could. Din needs intel, ships, and every scrap of information he can squeeze out of the one man who actually understands what took these people and where they might be now. And so you get this deeply uneasy partnership where every time they cross paths, you know Din is planning on how to take Thrawn down afterwards. And Thrawn is quietly running contingency plans in case the Mandalorian turns on him first.
Target the fortress for bombardment.
Affirmative, Grand Admiral.
Then you've got the other angle, over on the Ahsoka side, which pushes this into an even scarier place. Baylan is over on Precedent, chasing a power that's greater than any other. And so it's very easy to imagine a version of this story where the New Republic and what's left of the Empire are so busy locking horns that they completely miss the bigger picture. Thrawn knows exactly the kind of character who actually wouldn't. He's the one who studies myths and old stories to understand how cultures fall. If he even gets a hint that a Mortis-level entity, something in the Abeloth bracket, is starting to stir, then suddenly his whole Heir to the Empire project looks tiny next to the risk of the entire galaxy getting spiritually and literally corrupted. And that's the moment where he needs someone like Din, not as a pawn, but as a blunt instrument who can actually get into the places his destroyers can't. Din doesn't care about force cosmology or the philosophy of breaking the cycle. He cares about whether any of this is ever going to come near Grogu.
He means more to me
If Ahsoka or Thrawn sat him down and said, look, this thing can corrupt Jedi, break Sith, and mentally shred entire worlds, it's not hard to see him get dragged into a mission that's a little bit less take down Imperials and more make sure this thing never reaches the main galaxy at all. So you end up with the same dynamic from a different angle. Thrawn brings the knowledge, the long-term view, the understanding of just how big the danger really is, and Din brings the boots on the ground edge, the New Republic contacts, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect his found family. Not because they agree or because Thrawn is redeemed, but because if a Mortis tier threat or a full Grisk-style invasion ever truly steps onto the board, there won't be a New Republic versus Imperial Remnant conflict left to fight. And the question then becomes, when the dust settles, do either of them actually walk away from that alliance unchanged? And yeah, the thing we need to remember about Thrawn is that he's not precious about who he stands next to. We've literally seen him cut a deal with the Great Mothers in Ahsoka. He's not a Night Sister. He doesn't really care about their beliefs, he just sees the value. They want a way off Peridea and a chance to rebuild on Dathomir, resurrecting their dead and restoring their place in the galaxy. He wants a shortcut back into the war with an army and some very freaky dark magics thrown in. Those goals overlap just enough that he shakes their hand, gets his zombie troopers, gets his escape, and you can feel in the way he talks to them that the second their usefulness runs out, that partnership is on borrowed time.
Our alliance has proven to be quite beneficial.
And that's not a one-off. In Thrawn Alliances, he goes on a mission with Anakin Skywalker in the middle of the Clone Wars. Anakin thinks he's just dealing with a separatist problem and trying to save Padme. Thrawn, on the other hand, is playing a longer game. He realises the weird things happening on the edge of the unknown regions point to something much nastier hiding out there, and he uses the chaos of war and Anakin's skills to get eyes on it. The two of them couldn't be more different, but they both understood one simple truth. Together, they get more out of what they want than they ever would apart. Anakin gets Padme and the Separatists taken care of. Thrawn walks away with information about a threat the rest of the galaxy doesn't even know exists yet.
You're certain there's only the one starship?
Correct, Grand Admiral.
So when we talk about a scenario where Thrawn and Din have to work together, it's not some completely alien idea that breaks his character. Like, this is exactly how he operates. If he looks at Din and sees a guy who can move through the Outer Rim, who has the trust of people like Carson and Ahsoka, and who will quite literally walk into hell if it means protecting one tiny green kid, that's an asset. The question isn't, would Thrawn ever work with him? The real question is, what kind of situation is bad enough for Din to grit his teeth and actually work with Thrawn? What does it take for the man who helped bring down Gideon to stand in the same room as the heir to the Empire and not immediately reach for his blaster?
Where are you from, Brown Eyes?
And so yeah, this is where it gets really messy for Din personally, because alliances like this don't happen in a vacuum. What's that going to look like on the outside? New Republic officers hearing rumours that their favourite Mandalorian contractor has been seen on the same ship as Thrawn. Ahsoka trying to weigh up whether she can trust Din's judgment if he's taking intel from the very man she's been warning everyone about. Even Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians would have questions. Is he selling them out, or is he being played? Or is he the only one willing to stand in the grey area because he's seen what's coming over the horizon?
I don't know if I can keep everyone together.
And then you got Grogu in the middle of all of this, because if Din's suddenly going on missions to stop galaxy-ending threats rather than cleaning up warlords, what does that do to their little dad and son on adventures bubble? But yeah, Thrawn has already shown he'll cross enemy lines if it helps him survive or prepares the galaxy for a threat only he can see. He's teamed up with witches, with Jedi, with the Republic itself when it suited him. Slotting Din into that pattern actually makes a scary amount of sense. The thing that makes it compelling isn't whether Thrawn would shake his hand, it's what that handshake costs afterwards.
This deal is getting worse all the time.
Does the New Republic ever fully trust Din again? Does Ahsoka back him or start to pull away herself? And once you fall side by side with someone like Thrawn against something far worse, can you ever go back to seeing the galaxy in simple good guy versus bad guy's terms? Or does that one temporary alliance change Din and Grogu's place in the story forever? So yeah, this whole thing started as one of those late nights, alright, this is ridiculous, but hear me out ideas. And the more I sat with it, the more I was like, actually, this might not be that far from where the story's actually heading. We're already in the remix of the original Thrawn trilogy with pieces of Heir to the Empire being slowly worked into canon. Back then, Thrawn's side didn't stay in a neat villain box. There were moments where his faction and the heroes had to acknowledge a bigger threat and move accordingly. Even though the details have changed, Yuuzhan Vong becoming a Grisk, old EU continuity being shuffled about, the core idea of Imperial masterminds worried about something else coming over the horizon is still very much there. Even in the new canon, that's already baked in, Thrawn teaming up with Anakin in alliances because he needs what Anakin brings to the table. He's cutting a deal with the Great Mothers on Ahsoka because their magics helps them get off Peridia. You know, he doesn't like these people, he doesn't share their beliefs, but he sees their value. So when you drop someone like Din into the mix, a Mandalorian, you know, you've got the Republic connections, a reputation by now of killing warlords, and a little green, Force-sensitive kid the whole galaxy seems destined to care about. Suddenly, the whole idea of Thrawn and Din standing on the same side of the battlefield starts to feel a little bit less like fan fiction, and starts feeling like a very plausible things have gone horribly wrong scenario. And honestly, wouldn't that kind of be refreshing, instead of another straight Rebels versus Empire retread, which we've basically had across 2 trilogies and a bunch of shows, right? You get this messy, morally grey moment where the only way to stop this cosmic level threat, or a full-on Grisk invasion, is for sworn enemies to temporarily play nice. Anyways, for me, that's where Star Wars gets really interesting, when the lines do blur and characters we think we've figured out are forced into choices that scare them as much as they scare us.
10 seconds to system shutdown. 10.
Thrawn and Din alliance shouldn't be clean, it shouldn't be comfortable, and it definitely shouldn't last. But as a chapter on the way to whatever they're building toward, I think it could be one of those, this changes everything kind of moments. The real question is, would you actually want to see Din go that far into the grey to protect Grogu? Or is that a line you'd never buy him crossing, even for the fate of the galaxy? As always, drop your thoughts, theories and wilder speculations down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our top 7 Grogu Force powers breakdown, which is now live on the channel. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one, and may the Force be with you.